Amaya Langston had never been one to take up space unnecessarily. She'd learned early in life that, as a young black woman in rooms full of older white men, silence could be a weapon sharper than words. But now, sitting at the head of a mahogany conference table 40 stories above Manhattan, she knew silence alone wouldn't save her father's empire. She was only 18, still in her first year of college. But tonight, all eyes were on her. "Mr. Allen," Amaya said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins, "explain how a $500 million derivatives position collapsed in less than a month." The CFO, a man twice her age with a reputation for surviving financial storms, shifted uncomfortably. His thick fingers fiddled with a Mont Blanc pen as he avoided her gaze. "Market volatility, Ms. Langston. The Fed's rate hike was unexpected." Amaya raised an eyebrow. "Unexpected? The Fed signaled its intentions for 6 months straight. Either you weren't paying attention or you didn't believe them." The other executives exchanged wary glances. No one dared laugh. "Langston Financial prides itself on foresight. We don't get blindsided by predictable moves. So which is it, Mr. Allen? Negligence or incompetence?" Allen's face turned a mottled red. "Ms. Langston," he began, his tone tight with restrained anger, "with all due respect, you're very young. And yet," she interrupted, her gaze cutting, "here I am saving your ass." 3 weeks ago, Marcus Langston, her father and founder of Langston Financial, had suffered his second heart attack. In the chaos that followed, Amaya had taken an unsanctioned dive into the firm's data systems. What she found horrified her. A reckless derivatives bet left unhedged, a ticking time bomb that could wipe out everything her father had built. She spent 72 hours straight modeling counter strategies, no sleep, no breaks, just caffeine, algorithms, and raw determination. In the end, she executed a series of trades that clawed back nearly $300 million of losses. It wasn't perfect, but it kept them alive. Now she faced a boardroom of men who didn't know whether to respect her or fear her. "Mr. Allen," Amaya said crisply, "you will oversee the unwinding of the remaining position and report to me hourly. After this quarter, your services will no longer be required." Allen's mouth opened and snapped shut. He nodded stiffly. "Meeting adjourned." When the room emptied, Marcus approached slowly. His once commanding frame seemed smaller, diminished by age and illness. "You didn't have to humiliate him like that." Amaya closed her laptop. "He humiliated himself. I just stated the facts." Marcus studied her. Pride and worry etched in equal measure on his face. "You're 18, Amaya. You should be at parties, not fighting financial wars." "I don't have time for parties." She slipped her laptop into a slim leather bag. "I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for you, for Mom, for everyone counting on Langston Financial to stay afloat." He sighed. "You've always been so much older than your years." "Someone had to be," she said softly. As Amaya left the building, the night air was thick with summer humidity. Her phone buzzed with notifications, news articles already speculating about the Langston prodigy and whether she was a genius or just lucky. She ignored them. In the back of the waiting SUV, she opened a new message from an unknown number. "Stay out of grown men's games, little girl, or bury your father next." Her pulse spiked. She reread the words twice, then deleted the message. This wasn't the first time she'd been threatened, but this one felt different, colder, more dangerous. At home in the Langston penthouse, she stood at the window and looked out over Manhattan's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, someone wanted her destroyed. She didn't know their face yet, but they would soon know hers. The early morning light barely broke through the thick Manhattan fog as Amaya Langston sat in the back of her black SUV, scrolling through financial reports with her brows knit tight. Each line of data felt like a battlefield report, numbers bleeding red, market trends dipping into dangerous territory. "Miss Langston," James, her driver said gently, "we're here." Amaya looked up to see the towering glass facade of Langston Financial, her family's empire gleaming like a beacon against the dreary sky. She adjusted the cuffs of her crisp white blouse, checked her reflection one last time in the rearview mirror, and stepped out. Reporters swarmed instantly. "Miss Langston, is it true you've personally taken over your father's role as CEO? Are rumors of a hostile takeover by Bishop Capital accurate?"
Do you feel prepared at 18 to lead a multi-billion-dollar firm? Amaya ignored the questions, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she entered the building. She didn't need to answer to them. She had bigger problems. Inside, Marcus was already seated in his office, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of the world rested there. "Dad," Amaya said quietly as she closed the door behind her. He looked up, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "You shouldn't be here this early." "I couldn't sleep." I placed a tablet loaded with financial analytics on his desk. I reviewed the positions overnight. The short exposure to tech stocks is riskier than we thought. And there's something else. Marcus raised a brow. She hesitated. Grace found chatter about Bishop Capital. They're leveraging influence at the SEC to open an investigation into us. Marcus's eyes darkened. Carter Bishop. Do you know him personally? Marcus exhaled slowly, the fingers steepled. Once, years ago. He's dangerous, brilliant, but ruthless. He's not above using regulators and media to break competitors. If he's coming for us, we have to strike first, Amaya finished for him. Marcus studied her for a long moment. You're certain about this? I'm not going to wait for him to dismantle us piece by piece. Amaya left her father's office and made her way to the 45th floor where Grace Tanaka, their cybersecurity chief, was already waiting. Morning, Grace said, pushing a cup of coffee across the desk. You're going to want this. Amaya sipped cautiously. What have you got? Grace's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up encrypted emails, transaction logs, and confidential memos. Bishop Capital is moving funds through shell companies, offshore accounts in the Caymans, Singapore, Zurich. It's complex, but I've started untangling the web. Amaya's eyes scanned the screen. Can we prove illegal activity? Not yet, but it's there. I can feel it. Give me 48 hours. You have 24. Grace smirked. You sound just like your father. That afternoon, Amaya convened an emergency meeting with the senior partners. The atmosphere in the boardroom was tense, thick with anxiety. Langston Financial is under attack, she began, her voice firm. Carter Bishop is using every resource to smear us, to cripple us in the eyes of investors and regulators. An older partner, Mr. Grayson, cleared his throat. With respect, Miss Langston, perhaps this is a fight best left to your father. He has the relationships to navigate this quietly. My father doesn't have the strength for another war, but I do, and I'm not asking for permission. Her eyes swept the room. I'm informing you. From this moment forward, I'm taking point. We're going on the offensive. The partners exchanged uncertain glances, but said nothing. That night, as Amaya stared out her penthouse window, her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Stop digging, or the next body won't be a warning. She didn't flinch. Instead, she typed back with ice in her veins. Try me, and pressed send.
The Langston financial trading floor hummed like a hive as Amaya walked through, her heels clicking against polished marble. Screens flashed with candlestick charts and rolling tickers. Traders barked into headsets, their faces tight with stress. She stopped at the glass wall of the risk management office, where Grace stood, surrounded by glowing monitors. Tell me you have something, Amaya said. Grace motioned her in. Oh, I have something, and you're not going to like it. Amaya stepped closer as Grace brought up a series of documents on the main screen. Internal memos, confidential emails, transaction histories. Bishop Capital is laundering money through their Cayman subsidiaries, and not small sums. We're talking billions, Amaya. They're manipulating equity markets, shorting companies they've secretly sabotaged, and hiding the profits offshore. Amaya's eyes narrowed. Do we have proof? She said. Enough to get the SEC's attention if they weren't already in Bishop's pocket. Grace leaned back in her chair. But if we release this to the media, they'll tear him apart. Amaya finished the thought. Grace nodded. You're playing with fire. You know that, right? Amaya folded her arms. So is he. That evening, Amaya returned home to find Marcus in the study. He was staring at an old photo of himself and a younger Carter Bishop, laughing over drinks in some long-forgotten club. You knew him well, Amaya said, her tone softer than usual. Marcus sighed. Too well. Carter and I came up together. He's brilliant, charismatic, but there's a darkness in him. He doesn't just want to win, he wants his enemies to suffer. Amaya's expression hardened. So he won't stop. No,
Marcus looked at her with a heaviness that made her chest tighten. "And neither will you? "I can't," she admitted. "If I stop now, he'll crush us. Crush you. I won't let that happen." Marcus reached out, placing a hand on hers. "Just promise me something. Whatever this costs, don't lose yourself in the fight." She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure she could keep that promise. The next morning brought chaos. A headline splashed across every financial news outlet. "Langston Financial under SEC investigation. Sources say fraud allegations could lead to criminal charges." Amaya stormed into the office, reporters shouting questions as she pushed past them. Grace met her at the elevator. "They're moving fast, too fast. Someone's feeding them fake evidence." "Bishop," Amaya spat. In the boardroom, the partners were in a panic. "This could sink us," Grayson said, his face pale. "We need to settle. Offer Bishop whatever he wants." "No," Amaya slammed her hand on the table. "This isn't negotiation. This is war." She spent the next 6 hours locked in her office with Grace, building a counteroffensive. Whistleblower files, secret recordings, data trails that exposed Bishop's corruption. But as the sun set, her phone buzzed with a chilling message. "Your father won't survive the scandal." Her hand shook as she read it again and again. Grace noticed. "Amaya?" she asked. "They're threatening him," she whispered. "Directly." Grace stood. "We need security around Marcus, now." Amaya nodded, her jaw tight. "And call every media contact we have. If Bishop wants a war, let's give him one." That night, Amaya held a press conference in the Langston Financial lobby. Cameras flashed as she stepped up to the podium, her face calm but her heart pounding. "Today's allegations against my family's firm are baseless and politically motivated. I have evidence of a coordinated attack on our company led by Carter Bishop and his associates. This is an abuse of power, and I will not stand for it." Reporters erupted with questions, but Amaya didn't flinch. She stared into the cameras, her voice cold and clear. "Langston Financial will survive this, and when the truth comes out, so will Bishop's empire." Back in her office, Grace handed her a USB drive. "This has everything. If you release this, there's no going back." Amaya took it, staring at the small object that now held the power to topple a billionaire. "No going back," she echoed softly. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. "You release that, and Marcus dies." She didn't respond, but deep down, she knew this wasn't just business anymore. It was personal.
The office was quiet after the press conference, but Amaya Langston could still feel the weight of flashing cameras and reporters' hungry stares. She sat alone in her glass-walled corner office, her reflection fractured across the panes like a woman split between identities, the child prodigy and the hardened executive. Her phone vibrated against the mahogany desk. She didn't want to look, but she did. Unknown number. Your father's time is running out. Pull back or bury him. Amaya gripped the phone until her knuckles turned white. She stared out at the New York skyline, the city lights like a million watchful eyes. Somewhere in that sprawl, Carter Bishop was pulling strings, a puppet master orchestrating her downfall. But he underestimated her. Grace barged in without knocking, her laptop balanced in one hand and a coffee in the other. "We've got movement. Bishop's Cayman accounts are hemorrhaging cash. Someone's cleaning house." Amaya straightened. "He knows we're onto him." "Yeah, and he's covering his tracks. If we don't move now, we lose our leverage." Amaya's eyes hardened. "Then we move." Grace raised her eyebrow. "You're sure? Once we hit send, the media storm won't stop. Neither will Bishop. Neither will I." Grace handed over the USB drive. "This will light the match." Amaya slid it into her laptop and watched the files upload to an encrypted server. Her fingers hovered over the release button. She thought of her father, his voice worn and tired, urging her to fight, but also warning her of the cost. She pressed send. The fallout was immediate. By morning, every major network ran the headline. Bishop Capital exposed, offshore laundering, market manipulation uncovered in shocking leak. Stock prices tumbled, investors fled, Bishop's empire trembled under the weight of public outrage. But Amaya knew it wasn't enough. Bishop wouldn't go down quietly. At Langston Financial's boardroom, the partners looked at her like she'd conjured a miracle. "You may have saved us," Grayson admitted begrudgingly. "For now." Amaya didn't smile. "For now isn't good enough. Bishop will counterattack." As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Another message. "You've declared war, little girl. Wars spill blood." She locked the screen and turned to Grace. "Double security on my father, and find out who Bishop's inside man is." Grace's fingers danced across her keyboard. "Inside man?" Amaya nodded. "There's no way he's moving this fast without someone feeding him intel from here." Grace muttered under her breath. "Great, a mole, just what we needed." That night, Marcus sat in the study, staring at the fireplace, even though there was no fire. "You didn't have to do this," he said as Amaya entered. "Yes, I did." She perched on the arm of his chair. "If we didn't hit first, he would have buried us." He looked at her, his eyes heavy with a father's worry. "You remind me of myself when I was younger, but I had my wife to pull me back from the edge. Who's pulling you back, Amaya?" She didn't answer, because no one was. Meanwhile, in an opulent penthouse across town, Carter Bishop watched the news coverage with a glass of scotch in hand. "She's clever," he admitted to his advisor, "too clever for her age." "Do you want me to handle her?" the advisor asked. Bishop's eyes glinted with malice. "Not yet. Let her believe she's winning. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall." He swirled his drink and smiled coldly. "By the time I'm done, she'll wish she stayed in college." 2 days later, the first strike came. The SEC froze Langston Financial's main trading accounts, citing ongoing investigation in financial misconduct. Employees panicked, clients began pulling out funds. Grayson stormed into Amaya's office. "This is a death blow," he shouted. "Do you realize what you've started?" Amaya stood calmly, hands clasped behind her back. "I started a fight worth winning. Now get out of my office." Grayson gaped but said nothing as he left. Amaya sat down, her heart pounding in her chest. She stared at the screen where account balances dropped like falling dominoes. Grace appeared in the doorway. "We're bleeding, Amaya." "Then we patch the wounds." "How?" "We find Bishop's next move, and we cut it off before it starts." That night, Amaya couldn't sleep. She sat on her bed in the dark, scrolling through emails, legal notices, and market reports. At 3:17 a.m., an anonymous tip hit her inbox. "He's meeting with regulators tomorrow. Stop him or it's over." Amaya's pulse quickened. She didn't know who sent it, but she had no choice. She had to crash that meeting. The next morning, she dressed sharply in a tailored white suit and walked into the downtown Federal Building as though she owned it. A receptionist tried to stop her. "Ma'am, you can't." Amaya's voice cut like steel. "I can and I will." Inside, she found Carter Bishop seated at a polished oak table with 2 SEC officials. He looked up startled as Amaya entered. "Miss Langston, this is a closed—" "Then open it," Amaya snapped. Bishop's smile was slow and venomous. "You're out of your depth, little girl." Amaya dropped a thick folder on the table. "I doubt the SEC would like to see your evidence of bribes, Mr. Bishop." The officials looked at each other uneasily. Amaya leaned forward, her voice low and dangerous. "You want to play dirty? Fine, but don't ever underestimate me again." Bishop's smile faltered for just a moment, and Amaya knew she'd drawn blood. The conference room still smelled faintly of pine cleaner and power plays. Amaya Langston stood frozen in the doorway, her pulse a steady drumbeat in her ears as Carter Bishop turned lazily in his chair to face her. His smirk didn't reach his eyes. "Miss Langston," he drawled, his voice like smooth poison, "to what do we owe the pleasure?" 2 SEC officials, both middle-aged men in boxy suits, looked equally surprised. One of them cleared his throat nervously. "This is a private meeting." "Not anymore." Amaya's heels clicked sharply on the hardwood as she strode in. She dropped a leather portfolio onto the table with a satisfying thud. "This contains records of offshore accounts tied to Bishop Capital. Wire transfers, shell corporations, falsified audits. You've been looking for a smoking gun. There it is." One of the officials, a balding man with tired eyes, glanced at the folder, then at Bishop.
"Is this accurate?" he asked carefully. Bishop leaned back, unbothered. Fabrications, desperate attempts from a little girl out of her depth. Amaya's jaw tightened. "You can call me whatever you like. It won't erase what you've done." The tension thickened until it felt like the air itself was cracking. One official stood. "We'll review this material." Bishop's smile slipped ever so slightly as the men gathered the folder and left the room. When the door closed, silence enveloped them. "You're bold," Bishop said finally. "I'm necessary," Amaya shot back. "You think you've won a round." He rose smoothly to his feet, towering over her despite her heels. "But this isn't chess, little girl. It's war, and I don't lose wars." Amaya didn't flinch. "Neither do I." Outside, Grace was waiting near the black SUV, arms crossed and expression tense. "Did you really just barge into a federal meeting?" she asked. "Yes," Amaya said, climbing into the back seat. Grace slid in beside her. "And?" Amaya's voice was calm, but her fingers gripped her phone tightly. "I didn't expect him. I threw him off balance." "For how long?" "Not long enough." At Langston Financial, the trading floor buzzed like a disturbed hive. Screens showed plummeting numbers. Phone lines blinked red as panicked investors called in. Grayson cornered Amaya as soon as she stepped off the elevator. "We're hemorrhaging clients. Half of our institutional investors have pulled out in the last 24 hours. "Then we replace them," Amaya said coolly. "With who?" Grayson demanded. "No one trusts us anymore." "Then they'll have to fear us instead." Grayson gaped. "You're insane." "No." Amaya's voice dropped, cold and sharp. "I'm a Langston." That night, Amaya sat alone in her penthouse, staring at a glass of untouched wine. The city lights stretched endlessly beyond her window, but she felt the walls pressing in. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You're making this too easy. The next funeral will be yours." She set the phone down carefully, refusing to let her hands shake. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. Marcus entered slowly, leaning on his cane. His face was pale, drawn with worry. "You're pushing too hard," he said softly. "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice." Amaya shook her head. "Not when the alternative is losing everything." Marcus sank into a chair with a weary sigh. "I built Langston Financial to give you a future, not to make me fight my enemies." "You built it," Amaya said, her voice tight. "But they see me as the one holding it now. I don't get to walk away." Marcus looked at her for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Then fight smart, not just hard." The next morning, Grace stormed into Amaya's office. "We found the mole." Amaya looked up sharply. "Who?" Grace threw down a folder. "Grayson. He's been leaking internal memos to Bishop for months." Amaya's stomach twisted, not with surprise, but with anger. "Bring him to my office." Minutes later, Grayson arrived, pale and sweating. "You betrayed us," Amaya said flatly. "It wasn't personal. I thought Bishop would win. I was protecting my stake." Amaya stood. "Your stake is gone." "You can't." "I already did." She pressed a button on her desk. Security guards entered, flanking Grayson. "Escort him out. Permanently." Grayson's protests echoed down the hall as he was dragged away. Amaya turned to Grace. "Send a memo to all staff. Langston Financial doesn't tolerate disloyalty." Grace hesitated. "This will scare them." "Good. Fear is stronger than trust right now." In his penthouse, Bishop hurled a glass at the wall as he watched the news coverage of Grayson's firing. "She's more dangerous than I thought." His advisor shifted nervously. "Do we escalate?" "Oh yes. It's time she learned what it means to lose everything." That night, Amaya returned home to find her penthouse door ajar. She froze. Slowly, she pushed it open, her heart hammering. Inside, the living room was wrecked. Drawers yanked out, papers scattered, furniture slashed. And on the wall, scrawled in red spray paint, "Next time, it's blood." Amaya Langston stood motionless in the doorway of her penthouse, the stench of spray paint thick in the air. The words, "Next time it's blood," dripped across her living room wall like a promise. Her fingers twitched at her sides, aching for control, but there was none to be had here. Grace arrived within minutes, flanked by 2 security guards in dark suits. She swept a flashlight over the wreckage, her jaw tight. "They didn't take anything," Grace said. This wasn't a robbery, it was a message. Amaya's eyes didn't leave the crimson letters. I know. We can't let this slide, Grace insisted. This is Bishop. He's escalating. Amaya turned slowly, her voice calm but sharp as glass. Then so are we. The next morning, Amaya called a meeting in the Langston financial boardroom. Senior executives gathered around the polished table, their expressions uneasy. Carter Bishop thinks he can break us, Amaya began, her voice carrying the weight of authority that belied her age. He thinks intimidation and fear will make us fold. He's wrong. She tapped the table. Effective immediately, we're freezing all operations with companies tied to Bishop Capital. No trades, no transactions, nothing. We're cutting him off at every possible angle. Grayson's replacement, a cautious woman named Sullivan, shifted nervously. Won't that provoke him further? Amaya's eyes were ice. He's already provoked. Now we hit back. Across Manhattan, Carter Bishop was watching the markets in his skyscraper office when the first alert came through. Langston Financial terminates relationships with Bishop affiliates. He leaned back in his chair, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. She's got teeth, he murmured. His advisor hovered nervously. Should we retaliate? Oh, absolutely, but not yet. Bishop's fingers drummed on the armrest. Let her believe she's winning. Then we crush her. Meanwhile, Amaya and Grace worked late into the night. They combed through hundreds of pages of Bishop Capital documents Grace's team had hacked from offshore servers. There's a pattern here, Grace said, highlighting transaction after transaction. He's been funneling money into a real estate shell. One specific property, an old shipping yard in Jersey. Amaya frowned. Why? Grace pulled up a map. I don't know, but it's worth investigating. Amaya stood, grabbing her coat. I'll go. Grace grabbed her arm. No, you're a target now. Send someone else. Amaya shook her head. This is my fight. The shipping yard was silent under the weight of midnight. Amaya's SUV idled at the edge of the lot as she and Grace surveyed the crumbling warehouses. I don't like this, Grace muttered. Neither did Amaya, but instinct told her there was something here. They slipped inside one of the buildings, the air thick with dust. A faint hum of electricity guided them deeper, until they found rows of servers and filing cabinets. This isn't a shipping yard, Amaya whispered. This is a data hub. Grace's eyes widened. He's hiding something big here. This isn't just money, it's leverage. They started pulling files, snapping photos of documents, when a noise echoed behind them. Footsteps. Go, Amaya hissed. They bolted out the back, the sound of boots pounding after them. Bullets pinged off rusting metal as they dove into the SUV. Grace floored it. That was too close, she gasped. Amaya's chest heaved. But we got what we came for. The next day, Grace decrypted the files. What she found made her curse under her breath. He's blackmailing half of Wall Street, she said. Photos, videos, emails. This is his insurance policy. If anyone moves against him, he burns them all. Amaya stared at the screen. And if we expose this? Chaos. But he goes down with them. Amaya nodded slowly. Prepare a dossier. We may not get another shot. Hours later, Amaya sat in her office as the sun set, painting the city in shades of fire. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You were warned. Marcus is next. Her stomach turned to ice. Grace, she shouted. Grace appeared instantly. We need security on my father, now. Double it, triple it. I don't care what it costs. Grace nodded and ran. Amaya leaned against her desk, her fingers digging into the wood. She had fought too hard, come too far to lose him now. That night, Bishop sipped scotch in his penthouse, watching the skyline flicker. Langston's smart, he admitted to his advisor, but she's emotional. She cares about her father. That's her weakness. He smiled coldly. Let's exploit it. At that exact moment, Amaya received a call that stopped her heart. "Miss Langston," a trembling voice said, "your father's been in an accident." Amaya's world tilted. She grabbed her coat and ran, her heels clattering down the marble halls like gunfire. The hospital was a fortress of fluorescent lights and hushed voices. Amaya stormed through the sliding doors, Grace trailing behind her, phone still glued to her ear as she coordinated with security. Nurses looked up as Amaya strode past, her white coat billowing like a flag of war. "Marcus Langston," she barked at the reception desk. "Where is he?" The nurse flinched. "Room 417, but—" Amaya was already moving. Her heels clattered against linoleum, each step fueled by dread. She burst into the room to find Marcus lying pale against starched sheets, an oxygen tube taped under his nose. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of her voice. "Amaya!" His tone was faint, but steady. "You shouldn't have come." "Don't you dare," she said, taking his hand. "Don't you tell me where I should be right now." Grace slipped inside quietly, her expression grim. "The doctors say he's stable. Broken ribs, a concussion. It could have been worse." Amaya's jaw tightened. It wasn't an accident. Marcus's hand squeezed hers weakly. "This isn't your fight anymore, Amaya. Let it go before it consumes you." But Amaya's eyes were cold fire. "No. He made it my fight when he came for you." Outside the hospital, Bishop watched from the back of a sleek black car parked across the street. His advisor sat beside him nervously. "She's stubborn," the advisor said. Bishop smiled thinly. "Good. That makes breaking her all the more satisfying." He sipped his scotch. "Tell our friend in the SEC it's time to tighten the noose." Back at Langston Financial, the situation worsened by the hour. Regulatory agencies froze more assets. Clients withdrew millions in panic. Analysts on cable news predicted the firm's collapse within weeks. Amaya stood in the middle of the trading floor, her voice sharp as a whip. "We are not dead. Not yet. And as long as I'm standing, we won't be." Nurses glanced nervously at one another, but straightened under her gaze. Grace approached quietly. "You're bleeding cash. If this keeps up, we'll have to shut down operations." "Not if we turn the narrative." "How?" "By proving Bishop's corruption before he destroys us completely." Grace looked skeptical. "You really think we can take down a man like that?" Amaya's eyes were flint. "I don't think. I know." That night, Amaya met with investigative journalist Lena Torres in a dimly lit diner on the Lower East Side. "You're sitting on dynamite," Lena said after scanning the encrypted files Amaya handed over. "You sure you want to light the fuse?" "Do it," Amaya said. "Expose him, every dirty deal, every payoff. Burn him to the ground." Lena's gaze sharpened. "Once this goes live, there's no walking away." "I don't plan to." The next morning, headlines screamed across every screen. "Bishop Empire crumbling. Leaked files reveal massive blackmail network." Stocks plummeted. Politicians distanced themselves from Bishop. Protesters gathered outside his offices. At Langston Financial, Amaya watched the news with a rare, grim smile. Grace nudged her. "You've cornered him." But Amaya shook her head. "Not yet. Cornered animals bite the hardest." She was right. Hours later, a package arrived at Amaya's office. No return address, no markings. Inside, a single photo. Marcus in his hospital bed, a man in surgical scrubs standing ominously beside him. Scrawled across the photo in black ink, "Time's up." Amaya's hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. "Grace," she said quietly. "Yes?" "Pull every favor, call every ally. We're going scorched earth." Grace blinked. "You mean—" "Yes. If Bishop wants war, he'll get one." In Bishop's penthouse, his advisor watched the markets nosedive on a tablet. "It's over," the advisor said. "We need to cut our losses and run." But Bishop only smiled, swirling his drink. "Oh no. It's never over until one of us is on the floor, bleeding." He set the glass down gently. "Prepare the final move." That night, Amaya stood alone on her balcony, the wind whipping her hair as she stared at the city below. Somewhere out there, Bishop was plotting his endgame. She whispered into the night, her voice a vow. You wanted a fight. You're about to get a war.
Amaya Langston didn't sleep that night. She sat in her office surrounded by papers, screens aglow with data feeds, encrypted messages blinking one after another. Her reflection in the glass window was a ghost, tired eyes, perfect suit, and a determination carved into the hard line of her jaw. Grace entered quietly with 2 coffees and set one beside her. "You've been at this for 20 hours straight," Grace said gently. "You need rest." "I'll rest when he's finished." Grace didn't argue. Instead, she placed a stack of freshly printed reports on the desk. "Here's what we found. Bishop's entire offshore web leads back to one master account in Luxembourg. Pull the thread, and his empire unravels." Amaya flipped through the papers, scanning the names of shell companies and the signatures of men she'd once seen shaking Bishop's hand at charity galas. "Have we got proof?" "Enough to make him bleed," Grace said. Amaya pushed the reports aside and stared out at the city lights. "Good. Then we start cutting." The next morning, Langston Financial launched its counterstrike. Anonymous tip-offs sent regulators storming Bishop Capital offices in London, Dubai, and Singapore. Banks froze hundreds of accounts tied to his shell companies. Headlines screamed across the globe. "Bishop's House of Cards collapsing." The media played endless loops of Bishop storming out of court buildings, his face flushed with rage, his trademark calm gone. At Langston, employees watched the chaos unfold on their phones between meetings, hope flickering for the first time in weeks. Grace walked into Amaya's office carrying her laptop. "You've got to see this." She set it down, and a live feed appeared. Protesters were gathered outside Bishop's Manhattan headquarters, holding signs, "Lock him up. End Wall Street corruption." The chant was deafening. Amaya allowed herself the smallest of smiles. "This is working." "Yeah, but he's not down yet." Amaya's phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me alone. Midnight. Pier 47. Attached was a photo of Marcus asleep in the hospital bed. A man in a janitor's uniform stood over him, holding a scalpel. Amaya's heart clenched. "Absolutely not," Grace said when Amaya told her. "This is a trap." "I know, but I don't have a choice." "You think Bishop will play fair? He won't. He'll kill you." "Then I'll take him with me." Grace grabbed her arm. "You don't have to do this alone. Let me call the FBI." "No." Amaya's voice was ice. "If the feds get involved now, he'll make my father disappear before they can act." Grace's shoulders sagged. "Then at least let me come." Amaya shook her head. "This ends with him and me." At midnight, Amaya stood at Pier 47. The river's black water lapped at the wood pilings and fog curled like restless spirits. A single figure emerged from the mist. Carter Bishop. He wore an immaculate black coat, his hands shoved casually into his pockets. "You've been busy," he said, his voice calm but edged with fury. "So have you," I replied. "You think you've won," Bishop stepped closer. "You think toppling a few accounts and feeding your evidence to vultures makes you untouchable?" "I don't think," I said evenly. "I know." Bishop's laugh was low and dangerous. "You're bold, I'll give you that. But boldness is no match for power. I own this city. I own the courts, the banks, the regulators. You've just delayed the inevitable." Amaya's eyes glinted. "Not inevitable anymore. You underestimated me, Bishop. That was your first mistake." He took another step, now only feet away. "And your mistake was thinking you could come after me without consequences." A click echoed as he drew a gun from his coat. Amaya didn't flinch. "You're not going to shoot me here," she said calmly. "Too many witnesses." His smirk widened. "I don't need to. By morning, Langston Financial will be seized. Your father will die in his hospital bed. And you—" He didn't finish. The sound of boots on wet wood cut him off. Grace emerged from the fog, flanked by 2 armed private security men. "Step away from her, Bishop," Grace called. Bishop's eyes flicked between them. His smirk faltered. "You brought backup?" Amaya tilted her head slightly. "You think I'd walk into your trap unprepared? That was your second mistake." Bishop lowered his gun, his face twisting into a snarl. "This isn't over." Amaya stepped closer until they were nearly nose to nose. "Oh yes," she said softly. "It is." From the shadows, federal agents appeared, dozens of them. "Carter Bishop, you're under arrest for fraud, racketeering, and conspiracy to commit murder." Bishop's mouth opened in shock as agents closed in. "You tipped them off," he hissed at Amaya. "I tipped them off weeks ago. You've been dancing on a trap since the moment you touched my family." As Bishop was led away in cuffs, Amaya finally exhaled. Grace came to stand beside her. "You did it," Grace said softly. Amaya stared at the river, the fog lifting as dawn broke over the city. "No, we did it." But deep down, she knew this wasn't a victory. It was survival. And survival was never clean.
The news broke before sunrise. Helicopter shots of Carter Bishop being led out of his penthouse in handcuffs dominated every network. Reporters shouted questions over each other as the disgraced tycoon kept his head down, his expensive coat flapping in the wind like a tattered flag. Bishop arrested in sweeping federal sting. Langston Financial's Amaya Langston credited with exposing billion-dollar fraud. Amaya stood in her penthouse, still dressed in yesterday's suit, staring at the television. She didn't smile. The sight of Bishop's downfall brought no joy, only a heavy, unfamiliar quiet in her chest. Grace appeared with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, setting one down gently. "You should be celebrating," Grace said softly. "You won." Amaya shook her head, her voice low. "I survived, that's all." Grace studied her for a long moment. "Then what comes next?" Amaya didn't answer. At Langston Financial, the mood was cautiously euphoric. The trading floor buzzed with life again. Phones rang with calls from investors eager to return. Employees shook hands and laughed in relief. Grayson's old office had already been cleaned out and reassigned to Sullivan, who now stood beside Amaya in the boardroom. "Damage control is working," Sullivan reported. "Our stock's climbing, clients are trickling back. Keep the momentum," Amaya said. "Should we make a public statement?" Amaya's eyes swept the room. "Yes, but not about Bishop. This isn't about him anymore. It's about us, who we are, and what we stand for." Heads nodded around the table. "Write something bold," Amaya continued. "No apologies, just vision." Later that afternoon, Amaya visited her father in the hospital. Marcus looked stronger, his color returning. "You did it," he said as she entered. "You saved the company." Amaya sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I saved a company, but at what cost?" Marcus frowned. "What do you mean?" "I became him. Ruthless, calculating. I threatened, I destroyed." "You did what you had to do," Marcus said gently. Amaya looked away, tears sting in her eyes. "I don't know who I am anymore." Marcus reached for her hand. "You're my daughter, and you've always known how to fight. Just don't forget how to live." 2 weeks later, Amaya stood on the stage of an investor summit, flanked by Langston Financial's logo in bold silver letters. Cameras flashed as she approached the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "the past months have tested us in ways few could imagine, but crisis is a crucible. It burns away the unnecessary, leaving only what is essential." She let her gaze sweep the room. "Integrity, resilience, innovation. These are the pillars Langston Financial will stand on, not just today, but for the future." A standing ovation erupted. Amaya smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. That night she walked alone through Central Park, the crisp air biting at her skin. Every shadow felt alive, every whisper of wind carrying the echo of threats long past.
Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Congratulations. You're officially one of us now. She froze, staring at the screen until the screen dimmed. The next morning, Grace found her already at her desk, reviewing files. "Are you okay?" Grace asked cautiously. "I'm fine," Amaya replied clippedly. Grace hesitated. "You don't have to keep fighting ghosts, you know. He's gone." Amaya looked up, her eyes cool and unreadable. "There's always another bishop." Grace didn't argue. She just turned and left quietly. In a small, nondescript cafe across town, a man sat with a newspaper folded neatly on the table. The headline read, "Langston rises from the ashes." He stirred his coffee slowly, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "She's good," he murmured. Then he reached for his phone. "Put everything in motion. If she thinks the game's over, she's about to learn how deep this rabbit hole goes." Back at Langston Financial, Amaya stood at the window of her office as the city pulsed below. Her reflection stared back at her, sharp and polished. For the first time, she wondered if the price of victory was her soul. But if it was, she would pay it again. Because this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning.
The boardroom was silent, save for the rhythmic ticking of the Langston Financial clock. Amaya sat at the head of the table, surrounded by her senior team. Their faces reflected a mixture of exhaustion and admiration. The company was steady again, profitable, respected. She had done what few thought possible, but the victory felt hollow. "Sullivan," Amaya said crisply, "give me the status." Sullivan cleared her throat. "Our Q3 projections are up 18%. Investor confidence is climbing, and the SEC has officially closed all investigations into Langston Financial." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. "Good," Amaya replied, "but stay vigilant. We're not out of the woods yet." Grace leaned forward. "You think Bishop still has reach?" Amaya's eyes flicked to her, sharp as glass. "No, but there's always someone waiting in the wings." That night, Amaya's penthouse felt like a mausoleum. She stood in her bedroom staring at her reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back wore an immaculate suit, diamond earrings catching the soft light. But her eyes were tired, guarded. She slipped out of her heels and crossed the room barefoot, the city's glow spilling in through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Her phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Nice work cleaning up Bishop's mess. Now let's see how you handle ours." Attached was a photo, a shipment ledger with the Langston Financial logo in the corner. Beneath it, a single line. $200 million sovereign assets transfer pending. Amaya's stomach sank. She didn't recognize the account number, but she recognized the threat. "Grace," she barked into her headset moments later, "I need eyes on all international transfers in the last 72 hours. Cross-check for anomalies." Grace didn't hesitate. "On it." By morning, the anomaly was clear. "Someone's trying to funnel $200 million out through a Langston shell, but that account doesn't exist on our books, not officially." "Who set it up?" Amaya demanded. Grace hesitated. "It's the thing. It's not just one person. It's a network, embedded deep in your infrastructure." Amaya's blood ran cold. A mole? More like a syndicate. They've been here for years. Amaya stood abruptly, pacing. Then Bishop wasn't the end, he was the beginning. Across town, in a sleek glass tower, a man watched Amaya's frantic calls on a bank of surveillance monitors. His tailored suit was impeccable, his gold watch catching the light as he swilled his whiskey. "She's resourceful," he murmured, "but resourcefulness has limits." A woman in a crimson dress leaned against his desk. "Shall we apply pressure?" He smiled. "Not yet. Let her believe she has a chance. That's when she'll break." At Langston, Amaya summoned her executive team for an emergency session. "There's a cancer in this company," she said flatly, "and we're going to cut it out before it kills us." Sullivan paled. "Are we talking layoffs?" "No, we're talking a full audit.
Every department, every transaction. No exceptions. Grace leaned in. If the syndicate's as big as I think, they'll retaliate. Let 'em try, Amaya said. I'm done playing defense. 2 days later, retaliation came. The first blow was subtle, a cyber attack that wiped out 3 terabytes of client data. The second was louder, a whistleblower accusing Langston of insider trading. The third was personal, a car bomb that destroyed Amaya's armored SUV while parked outside her penthouse. She watched the flaming wreckage from behind the lease barricades, her expression unreadable. Grace grabbed her arm. You can't stay here. You need protection. Amaya's voice was calm. No, I need answers. That night, Amaya met with Lena Torres again in a Chinatown tea house. Ever heard of the Sovereign Circle? She asked. Lena's brow furrowed. Shadow cartel. They control black markets, fund coups, topple economies. They're ghosts, untouchable. Not anymore, Amaya said coldly. Lena stared at her. You're planning to take on the Circle? I don't plan, I act. Meanwhile, in the glass tower, the man watching Amaya drained his whiskey and set the glass down with a soft clink. She's coming for us, his assistant said nervously. Good. His lips curled into a predator's grin. Let her come. The next morning, Amaya addressed her staff from the trading floor. We've survived fires before. We'll survive this one, too. But understand this, our enemy isn't playing by the rules, and neither will we. The employees watched her, a mixture of fear and awe in their eyes. Langston Financial was built on resilience. Now it's time to prove it. As night fell, Amaya returned to her penthouse to find a red envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a single card. Move your king, your clock is ticking. No signature, no return address. Amaya stared at it for a long time before placing it on the mantel. I don't play chess, I end games. Amaya Langston stared at the city from her office window, the skyline jagged against the early morning fog. Every building felt like an opponent, every glowing light a watchful eye. She tightened her grip on her coffee mug, willing the tremor in her hand to stop. Grace entered without knocking, clutching a tablet. They hit us again. Amaya turned, her eyes steeled. Where? Zurich. 40 million in assets frozen under fabricated sanctions. And our Singapore branch reports 2 senior managers are missing. Amaya's jaw set. Dead? Grace hesitated. We don't know. Amaya set her mug down carefully. Call Sullivan. Emergency board meeting in 20. The Langston Financial boardroom felt colder than usual. Executives whispered nervously, their faces pale in the sterile light. Amaya took her place at the head of the table. We're under attack from within, she began, her voice even but hard. Sullivan raised a hand. You're referring to the Sovereign Circle? Yes. The rumors, Amaya. Ghost stories Wall Street tells itself to feel dangerous. Amaya's eyes locked on Sullivan's, unflinching. Tell that to the men who vanished in Singapore, or the bomb that destroyed my car, or the millions we're bleeding every hour. Silence. Grace stepped forward. We've traced parts of the syndicate's network. Shell companies, compromised employees, blackmail rings. It's vast. Amaya surveyed the room. They think they can intimidate us into submission. They're wrong. We don't bend. We don't break. Not to anyone. But in the back row, a junior board member whispered to a colleague, she's going to get us all killed. Later that night, Amaya's penthouse was unnervingly quiet. She sat at her kitchen counter reviewing data streams while Grace paced behind her. You can't keep doing this alone, Grace said. The Circle isn't just a corrupt firm. They're global. They have reach you can't imagine. I can imagine plenty, Amaya replied. You need allies, real ones, governments, regulators, hell, even Langston's competitors. If the Circle takes you out, we all go down. Amaya considered it for a long moment, then she nodded once. Call a summit. Everyone with something to lose from the Circle's rise. Bring them to the table. 3 days later, in a secured Manhattan hotel ballroom, the power players of finance gathered. CEOs, regulators, and political figures filed in, their conversations hushed, their eyes wary. Amaya stood at the podium. Behind her, a screen flashed images of bombed-out cars, missing executives, frozen accounts. "This is not just my fight," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "It's yours. Today it's Langston. Tomorrow it's you. The circle doesn't want competition. They want a monopoly on fear." A banker from London raised a hand. "You're asking us to go to war with phantoms." "They're not phantoms," Amaya countered. "They're people, and people bleed." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "Stand with me," she urged, "or stand alone when they come for you." For a long, tense moment, no one spoke. Then an older CEO from Tokyo stood slowly. "We will fight." One by one, others rose. Paris, Sydney, Sao Paulo. Amaya exhaled as the room shifted from fear to resolution. Meanwhile, across the city, the sovereign circle watched on hidden cameras. "She's uniting them," said the woman in red. The man in the tailored suit swirled his drink lazily. "Good. The higher she climbs, the harder she'll fall." He nodded to an associate. "Release the video." That night, Amaya returned to her office to find an email waiting for her. No sender, no subject, just a single attachment. She clicked. The video began with grainy security footage of Marcus Langston in a hospital room. A doctor in scrubs entered, syringe in hand. Marcus struggled weakly as the needle plunged. Moments later, his monitors flatlined. Amaya's hand flew to her mouth. "No!" The screen went black, then words appeared. "He didn't die of natural causes. You're next." Grace found her minutes later, still frozen before the screen. "Amaya, what is it?" "They killed him," Amaya whispered. Grace's eyes went wide. "The circle?" Amaya nodded, her face hardening. "This isn't war anymore. It's vengeance." As dawn broke over Manhattan, Amaya Langston stood at her office window, her reflection sharp in the glass. "They wanted to break me," she murmured. Her phone buzzed. Another message. "Move or be removed. Your clock is ticking." She stared at it, then typed a reply. "Tick louder." Her finger hovered before hitting send. Then she smiled grimly and pressed it.
The war room was silent, except for the faint hum of servers. Digital maps sprawled across massive screens, lines of code and transaction records streaming like veins of light. Amaya Langston stood at the center, arms folded, her presence sharp enough to cut steel. Grace and Liana Torres flanked her, both women equally grim. "This is everyone," Grace said, pointing to a dossier projected on the screen. "The circle's inner echelon, 13 key operatives. They control money, logistics, and enforcement." Amaya's eyes flicked over faces and names. Politicians, bankers, CEOs, even 2 United Nations officials. Each had a brief biography, a net worth, and, most importantly, a list of vulnerabilities. "This is a hydra," Liana warned. "Cut off one head, and 2 grow back. Then we burn the entire beast," Amaya replied. The first move came at dawn. Amaya authorized a covert operation against Sergei Petrov, the circle's enforcer in Eastern Europe. His private jet was seized on the tarmac in Prague, his accounts frozen under anti-money laundering statutes. The Czech authorities, tipped off anonymously, dragged him off in handcuffs. It made headlines within the hour. Grace set down her tablet, eyes wide. That was bold. Amaya's face didn't waver. Bold is the only language they understand. The retaliation came swiftly. By afternoon, an assassination attempt on Amaya failed when her armored limousine's driver, a Circle mole, was intercepted by Langston's new security detail. The mole was dead before he could pull the trigger. Amaya reviewed the security footage with no hint of surprise. "They're getting sloppy," she murmured. But Grace shook her head. "No, Amaya, they're getting desperate." The next target was Yvette Duval, a French banker who laundered billions for the Circle through offshore accounts.
Amaya and Liana worked in tandem, leaking Duval's most sensitive transactions to European authorities. A week later, Interpol raided Duval's Paris townhouse. Her mugshot hit every major news outlet. 2 down, Liana said, leaning back in her chair. 11 to go. Amaya didn't smile. This doesn't end until I rip out the root. One evening, as Amaya prepared for a board presentation, Grace appeared holding a secure phone. "It's for you," she said cautiously. Amaya pressed the device to her ear. "Langston," she said. A voice answered, low, male, with a faint accent. "You're impressive, Miss Langston. Few people survived this long against us. Then you're not as invincible as you think." A chuckle. "Perhaps, but consider this. What's Langston Financial worth without its CEO?" Amaya's grip on the phone tightened. "Threaten me again, and you'll learn what I'm worth alive. Alive, you're an obstacle. Dead, you're a martyr. Either way, we adapt. But can Marcus Langston's daughter adapt to blood on her own hands?" Before she could respond, the line went dead. That night, Amaya found herself staring at the reflection in her bathroom mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back, eyes sharp as daggers, lips pressed into a thin line. Power had reshaped her into something colder, harder. "Adapt," she whispered. The following week saw 3 more takedowns. A South African shipping magnate arrested for smuggling weapons. A Hong Kong billionaire exposed for child trafficking. A Russian oligarch's yacht seized in Monaco. Each strike destabilized the circle further, but it also escalated their counterattacks. Langston's servers suffered continuous cyber assaults. Rogue traders in Dubai attempted to tank Langston stock through coordinated short selling. A package bomb killed one of Amaya's London executives. Grace burst into Amaya's office one evening, pale and shaking. "This has to stop. They're butchering your people." Amaya's gaze was unflinching. "If we stop now, all those deaths mean nothing." Grace slammed her hands on the desk. "You're turning into them, Amaya. You can't fight fire with napalm." Amaya stood slowly. "I'm not fighting fire," she said, her voice deadly calm. "I'm erasing the match." Elsewhere, in a high-rise overlooking the Thames, the Circle's surviving leaders convened. "She's cost us billions," one man growled. "She's exposed half our network." The man in the tailored suit, their de facto leader, swirled his wine. "Langston's dangerous, but she's emotional, and emotion leads to mistakes." "What do you propose?" the woman in red asked. He smiled faintly. "Make her bleed where it hurts most. Family." That same night, Amaya received another encrypted message. This time, there was no text, just a video feed. Her younger brother, Jamal, tied to a chair, his face battered. The voice from the phone returned, calm and chilling. "Call off your war, Miss Langston, or Jamal dies." Amaya watched, expressionless, as Jamal's captors pressed a blade to his throat. Grace burst into the room, saw the feed, and froze. "Oh my God." Amaya's voice was cold steel. "Trace the feed, now." Grace hesitated. "If you attack, they'll—" "Now!" For 3 hours, the Langston cybersecurity team worked feverishly. Coordinates lit up on the map. An abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn. Amaya turned to Grace. "Get me a team. We move at dawn." As the first light of morning streaked the sky, Amaya stood in black tactical gear at the edge of the warehouse lot. Her earpiece crackled. "Alpha team ready." She gave a single nod. "Go." Gunfire erupted inside. Amaya moved like a shadow, her Glock steady, her steps silent. When she reached Jamal, he was barely conscious but alive. She cut his bonds and pulled him into her arms. "You're safe," she whispered, but her voice shook not with relief, but with fury. Back in her office hours later, Amaya stared at the wall of photos of the Circle's remaining leaders. Grace hovered nearby, wary. What now? Amaya's jaw tightened. "Now," she said, her voice low, "now I end this."
The boardroom was empty, except for Amaya. She sat at the head of the massive oak table, staring at a map projected across the wall. Red dots marked each known Circle operative still at large. 12. each one shielded by layers of influence, corruption, and armed security. Her phone buzzed. "Grace?" she said without looking. "They're gathering." Grace's voice came through, tight with apprehension. "Your allies from the summit. They're waiting for you in Geneva." Amaya stood, her reflection flashing in the polished wood. "Have them briefed. I want no hesitation." 2 days later, in a secluded Swiss chalet guarded by ex-special forces, Amaya entered a room full of power brokers. CEOs, heads of state, and intelligence chiefs turned as she strode to the front. "Thank you for coming," she began. "This isn't a meeting, it's a war council. The Sovereign Circle has infiltrated every major economy. They've assassinated, laundered, and extorted their way to global dominance." A European diplomat raised a hand. "You've been striking them one by one, but we've all seen the retaliation. Are you certain escalation is wise?" Amaya's gaze cut through him. "Escalation is all they understand. You want to wait. Wait, and your banks will burn. Wait, and your governments will fall." Her voice softened, dangerously calm. "Or we can strike. Together. Decapitate the entire network in one global operation." Murmurs. Nervous glances. Finally, Lena Torres spoke from the corner. "She's right. The circle won't stop unless we end them completely." An MI6 official leaned forward. "And if we fail?" Amaya's expression didn't waver. "Then we die fighting, but I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees." The plan was codenamed Operation Black Sun. 5 simultaneous strikes across 4 continents, dozens of assets mobilized, cyber attacks to drain accounts, mercenaries to seize physical assets, political blackmail to dismantle legal protections. Amaya watched as the pieces came together. "This is our moment," she said quietly to Grace as they reviewed logistics. "We either end them or they end us." Grace nodded, but couldn't hide her worry. "You're becoming ruthless." Amaya didn't blink. "Ruthless is how you survive wolves." At dawn, Operation Black Sun began. In Dubai, armored vehicles stormed a Circle-owned skyscraper, seizing servers and arresting executives. In Johannesburg, a warehouse full of laundered cash went up in flames. In Hong Kong, stock exchanges were flooded with evidence of Circle manipulation, triggering investigations. And in London, a Circle financier's private jet exploded before takeoff. Each hit was precise, devastating. Amaya monitored it all from a command center deep in the Swiss Alps, her face illuminated by screens. "Status," she demanded. Grace replied, voice taut. 4 targets neutralized, 2 captured. We've frozen $12 billion in assets. Amaya's lips curved slightly. "Good. Keep pushing." But then came the counterstrike. A massive cyber attack crippled the power grid in Manhattan, plunging the financial district into darkness. A coordinated disinformation campaign spread online, painting Amaya as a war criminal orchestrating a coup. And then the worst blow. News footage of a Langston financial executive kidnapped in Sao Paulo, her captors demanding Amaya's surrender. Grace slammed her headset down. "They're bleeding us dry. At this rate." "Stay focused," Amaya ordered. Her eyes burned as she watched the footage. "They're trying to break us. They don't understand I'm already broken." By nightfall, 9 of the 12 Circle leaders were either dead or in custody. Only 3 remained. One of them, the man in the tailored suit who had haunted Amaya's nightmares, finally made contact. He appeared on a secure video feed, calm and infuriatingly smug. "You're impressive, Miss Langston. I underestimated you." "You won't make that mistake again," she said coldly. "No, this time I'll kill you first." The screen went black. Amaya exhaled slowly and turned to Lena. "Get me his location." "It won't be easy," Lena warned. "He's the ghost of the Circle. Nobody's seen him in years." Amaya's jaw tightened. "Then we flush him out." The next morning, Amaya stood on the balcony of her temporary safe house. Snowflakes swirled around her as the sun rose over the Alps. She watched silently, her breath fogging the air. Grace joined her. You've taken down most of the circle, but at what cost? Amaya didn't answer at first. Finally, she said, You don't win a war by keeping your hands clean. Grace's eyes softened. Then how do you know when the war's over? Amaya looked out at the white horizon, her voice barely above a whisper. When I can look in the mirror and see something other than a weapon. Inside the command center, a blinking dot appeared on the screen. Lena's voice crackled over the intercom. Amaya, we found him. He's in Marrakesh. Amaya straightened, fire in her eyes. Prepare the jet. This ends now.
The private jet hummed softly as it cut across the skies over the Mediterranean. Amaya sat in the leather seat by the window, her face a mask of calm, though her mind was anything but. She could see Marrakesh approaching through a faint haze, a city drenched in sun and secrets. Grace sat across from her, fingers gripping a tablet, reviewing satellite images of the target's estate. Amaya, Grace said carefully, this is different from the others. You're going after the head of the serpent. He won't be caught off guard. He already is, Amaya replied. He thinks I won't come for him personally. Grace leaned forward. You don't have to. We have teams. This isn't about teams, Amaya cut in. It's about finishing what he started with my father. For a moment, the hum of the jet was the only sound between them. Then Amaya's phone buzzed. A text message. You made it this far. I'm almost impressed. Almost. No sender. No reply possible. Amaya stared at it, her jaw set. Almost isn't enough. The Marrakesh estate was a fortress, high sandstone walls, iron gates, guards with assault rifles patrolling the perimeter. Beyond it, lush gardens surrounded a sprawling villa with arched windows and crimson awnings. Amaya, dressed in black tactical gear, crouched with Lena and two ex-military operatives in an alley nearby. Satellite says he's in the East Wing, Lena whispered, but thermal signatures suggest at least 20 guards, maybe more. We don't need to fight them all, Amaya replied. We need one clear path. Lena hesitated. You're planning to go in alone? Yes. Amaya, no arguments. Her eyes were flint. Keep the extraction route clear. If I'm not out in 40 minutes, level the place. She slipped through the shadows, scaling a low section of wall where a fig tree leaned close. Landing silently in the garden, she moved between hedges and statues, every step calculated. 2 guards appeared ahead. She pressed herself against a wall until they passed, their laughter fading. The villa's east wing loomed. She reached a side door, picked the lock, and slipped inside. Marble floors, heavy curtains, the faint scent of expensive cologne. The man in the tailored suit sat in a leather armchair swirling a glass of wine. I was wondering when you'd stop hiding behind your mercenaries, he said without turning. Amaya raised her gun, finger steady on the trigger. This ends now. He laughed softly, finally standing, tall, immaculate, unafraid. You think killing me will kill the serpent? We are not a man. We are an idea, a system. I've broken systems before, Amaya said. He clapped his hands. Hidden doors swung open. 4 armed guards entered, rifles raised. Amaya fired first. 2 guards fell before they could react. She dove behind a marble column as bullets tore through plaster. The suited man stepped back, amused. Even if you kill me, Langston, others will rise. You'll never be free. Amaya rolled to the side, shot another guard in the leg, and closed the gap. 1 guard remained. She disarmed him with a swift kick, then slammed his head into the wall. Now it was just her and him. She leveled the gun. Any last words? The man smiled faintly. Yes. Look behind you. A sharp pain lanced through her shoulder. She spun to see a guard she'd missed, knife in hand. She shot him point blank and then staggered. Blood seeped through her sleeve. The suited man lunged for her, grabbing her wrist, trying to twist the gun free. They grappled, smashing into furniture. The gun slid across the floor. He pinned her to the ground, hands tightening around her throat. Your father begged too, he hissed. Amaya's vision blurred. Then her fingers found a shard of broken glass. With a surge of strength, she drove it into his neck. He gasped, blood pouring down his collar. Amaya shoved him off, crawling toward the gun. She aimed, her voice raw. This is for Marcus Langston. 1 shot. His body went limp. Amaya stood, swaying, clutching her bleeding shoulder. She pressed her earpiece. Lena, target neutralized. Get me out. Outside, Lena and the team met her at the extraction point. You're hurt, Grace said, concerned. "I'll live," Amaya murmured. They sped away as sirens wailed in the distance. Back at the safe house, Amaya sat in silence as Grace bandaged her shoulder. "It's over," Grace said softly. "You did it." Amaya's eyes were cold. "No, it's never over, but it's quieter now." Grace frowned. "What does that mean?" Amaya didn't answer. She stared at her reflection in the window. The woman staring back was unrecognizable. Later that night, alone in her room, Amaya picked up her phone. A new message blinked on the screen. "Well played, Ms. Langston. But some of us are harder to kill." Her fingers trembled as she typed back. "Then I'll find you too. Send." She set the phone down and exhaled. The war wasn't over, not yet. But for the first time in years, she allowed herself a small, fleeting smile. She was still standing.